Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This is our introduction to the teachings of the Buddha course. It's a 3-hour course where you're going to be able to learn what are the teachings of the Buddha, what the teachings of the Buddha are not, and then you're going to learn the very first teaching of the Buddha. In this very first teaching of the Buddha, you will learn what is the problem that he discovered in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward of how to completely eliminate the problems that he discovered. Essentially, what he's guiding you to is to enlightenment. Enlightenment is a mental state that you can attain in this life where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that can be eliminated from the mind. You're going to learn more about what enlightenment is as part of our class today. But the way that we start is we start with meditation. So I'll guide you guys in a meditation session because one of the best ways to get introduced to the teachings of the Buddha is to actually practice a little bit of his teachings, which is the meditation. There's other things that he taught besides that, but we can get started with the meditation. If you guys would like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is with some chanting to be able to ease into the meditation. The chanting sheets are over there on the cabinet. If you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to, because it actually helps you to ease your mind into the meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students commit the teachings to memory. So every 2 weeks, the students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So it was used as a learning tool or as a learning device. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. There's none of those kinds of things in his teachings. We use it today as a way to just ease into the meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of this, I don't think the Buddha even created these for himself. They were probably created by his students either during his life or after his death. So the Buddha wouldn't have walked around and said, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me. This would be ego, putting yourself above people. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't think that way. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, and frustration and all these other feelings to the peace and joy that is enlightenment, and this person didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you might actually have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think these actually came from his students rather than the Buddha himself. So I'll be chanting those on the way in. Then once we get into the meditation, I'll actually be providing guidance where I'll be teaching you and instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're all meditating. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining online will just all meditate at the same time. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might cough or sneeze. This is all normal. If you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. Where you live in an impermanent world, things are going to be constantly changing around you. So you're not going to be able to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet while you're meditating. So if you understand that the world is impermanent and you hear a sound during meditation, you can rest at ease and understand that's the way that the world works, that these sounds are going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and that's where I'll start today's course, helping you guys to understand more about the teachings of the Buddha. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times as part of your journey to enlightenment. There's various courses and retreats that can help you to be able to learn these. It's kind of like a tool belt, and you use these different tools at different times as part of your journey to enlightenment. But since most people are starting out in the seated position, and this is one of the primary positions that people learn in, I'll help you guys with a little bit of guidance on this, but just keep in mind what I share with you are just suggestions or recommendations. There's not just one fixed way to actually sit during meditation, because that would be permanence, and all of our bodies are different. So we're all going to find different things to be comfortable. Which is important is that your body's comfortable, not luxurious and not painful, but instead comfortable, which is in the middle. So you could be sitting on the floor, you could sit in a chair. Maybe if someone's at home, they might be on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. If you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will kind of help soften your seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross leg position, you might just choose to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. The same thing's true if you're in a chair, or a bench, or a sofa, or a wheelchair. You can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles, but you can see me sitting here in a chair with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect, with the sternum up and the shoulders back. It'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid with the upper body, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only does it keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, but it also makes it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to do some chanting to ease into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join, and then I'll come back in with the guidance to help you afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Wat Tung Mahakewanang Abhivateyami Sawakato Mahakewata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakewato Sawakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakewa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here, you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, either the sound of the breath or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Emakewa Wat Tung Mahakewanang Apiwateyami Sawakato Emakewata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Emakewato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakewa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakatoro Kawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusrang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good afternoon to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. I'm going to help you guys to understand the teachings of the Buddha as an introduction to what it is that he taught, so that way you can learn more about this individual, the Buddha, and what he taught and how to actually make your way to this enlightened mental state that he actually taught. The thing is that as I'm teaching, I'm going to be teaching for maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes, and I'm going to open up for questions. I'm going to teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes, opening up for questions. And as you guys would like to ask questions, I have people online who are joining us. If you guys could use microphones here to actually ask your questions, that would be helpful for the people online. In the middle of the room there in the white bowl, there's microphones. We also have some up here as well. If you'd like to ask a question, when we get to that point, if you could actually get a microphone, that'll be helpful for the people online. All you need to do is press the button, hold it. You'll see the lights come on, and you just hold this microphone up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these microphones with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone with them. And if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. For anybody who's online, you can ask questions by putting it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. So the teachings of the Buddha are something that's going to guide you towards improvement in your life and the way that your mind functions and the way that you make decisions on a day-to-day basis. What you're not going to hear from me is you're not going to hear a bunch of beliefs. The teachings of the Buddha aren't believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's also not rules and commandments. It's not rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. If you're seeing any of those kinds of things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't his actual teachings. He never taught rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. He didn't teach rules and commandments, and he didn't teach beliefs. So I'm going to help you guys to be able to see what it is that the Buddha taught. I'm going to explain to you what did he teach and what he didn't teach. And then I'm going to help you to be able to understand the very first teaching of the Buddha. By the time we get to the end of our class today, you will understand his very first teaching. In his very first teaching, you're going to understand the problem that he discovered in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. You can have a real breakthrough to being able to understand why you experience anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Right now, you might be thinking that it's other people who are causing these feelings. But by the time you get to the end of today's class, you'll be able to have a real breakthrough to being able to see what's causing these feelings, and then you'll actually be able to fix it. That's what the whole path to enlightenment is about getting to the point where your mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. So feel free to ask any questions as we go. I'm going to be pausing a few times, but just to get us started, I'm going to share with you guys what is an actual Buddha. That's a great place to get introduced to the teachings of a Buddha, is just to be able to understand what is an actual Buddha. So a Buddha meets three primary criteria. The first one is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. Then they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three primary criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. But then there's other criteria as well. An individual who's going to be a Buddha, they have a deep, profound memory, even in the unenlightened state, that they can remember countless details about their current life and their previous lives as well. This is actually how they get to enlightenment by themselves, without the help of any teachers or any guides. They accumulate wisdom over multiple lifetimes, and they apply it in their last life to be able to make their way to enlightenment. So the average person, that you have kind of like a limited capacity to your mind, that like a hard drive, you might have 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte or something like this. And when you get to the capacity, you have to delete old files in order to store new files. That's why, like in the last 5 or 10 years, you can kind of remember pretty much everything that you've been up to. But if you think back to your childhood, you kind of have spotty memories because you've had to delete those files in order to store these new files. An individual who's a Buddha, they don't have that. They have an unlimited capacity to remember countless details about their current life and their previous lives too. So they have this deep, profound memory that they are able to accumulate all this wisdom to be able to make their way to enlightenment. They also can quickly determine the condition of another person's mind by spending time with that person, and they can observe the challenges that an individual has within their own mind, and they can provide them teachings that are actually going to help them to be able to overcome those challenges. They don't do this with just any random person, but as they interact with their students are interested in learning and growing and developing on the path, and this is one of the reasons why a Buddha is so successful in helping people to be able to get to enlightenment, because they can observe the quality of their students' mind and then offer them teachings to be able to help them to overcome those challenges. And then lastly, an individual who's a Buddha is a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Whatever it is that they teach, they're also practicing those same things, because a Buddha is wise enough to understand that their students are learning just as much through their spoken words as they are through their actions. So a Buddha is teaching through their actions, not just their spoken words. So these are the criteria that make a Buddha a Buddha. And this type of individual is very rare in the world. You can get to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be considered a Buddha at that point. Sometimes people misunderstand this and they think that everybody is a Buddha, but the Buddha never actually said that. This is something that people are actually saying today. The Buddha talks about how rare it is that this type of individual exists in the world. So you're going to need teachers and guides to help you. But a teacher is like a tour guide. We're just pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and understand in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. It's you that's doing the work to be able to train your mind. So you're not a devotee or a follower or anything like that. You are an independent practitioner who's looking to cultivate wisdom. And through that wisdom, that's what's going to help you to awaken to this enlightened mental state. In fact, when we say awake or awakened, what it means is to cultivate wisdom. And you're cultivating wisdom about what you're going to hear about here in a little bit. So we call this type of person a fully, perfectly enlightened one. The reason why is because they don't have teachers or guides. And by the time they get to enlightenment, what they understand is the path to enlightenment. They don't have any extra baggage around. Where an individual who's gotten to enlightenment with the help of a teacher, a guide, who say this teacher is not an actual Buddha, this individual is going to have certain baggage in their mind. It might be a certain meditation that they're still doing that actually didn't contribute to their enlightenment, but they're still doing it just out of maybe respect for their teacher. So by the time an individual like this person gets to enlightenment, they don't have teachers and guides. So if they try a certain meditation and it works to improve the condition of their mind, they know that that's the path to enlightenment. But if something that they do doesn't lead to the improvement to the condition of their mind, they will discard that. So that's why by the time this person gets to enlightenment, they're fully, perfectly enlightened. And then they spend the rest of their life illuminating the path, laying down lights alongside of the path, so as many people as possible can understand what that path is to be able to get to enlightenment. So that's why we refer to this person as fully, perfectly enlightened. And again, this type of person is very rare in the world. What the teachings of the Buddha are they are a path to attaining enlightenment through purification of the mind. The Buddha discovered these individual pollutions that are in the mind, and he figured out the tools and the techniques of how to eliminate those pollutions and get them out of the mind. And that's what you're doing on the path to enlightenment, is you're applying these tools and techniques that he taught in order to be able to uproot these pollutions out of the mind. And as you do, you're going to see that the mind's performing more and more optimally. You'll see that you can attain this mental state where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's a permanent mental state. And you'll see your mind gradually moving towards this. It's not an instantaneous thing. Oftentimes people think the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment. And this isn't actually true. It was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It took him 6 years to be able to get to enlightenment. And he says it very clearly in his teachings, but not everybody studies his original teachings, so they don't necessarily know that that's what he taught, that it's gradually progressing towards this enlightened mental state. And you know that to be true because everything you've ever done in life has been that way. Whether it's to learn, to read, write, and speak a certain language, it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Or maybe there's some job or occupation, some special skill that you have. That was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that led you to that. So as you're gradually training your mind, you will get to a point where you no longer experience any of these discontent feelings. That gradually you'll see that your mind is experiencing more and more peace and joy. You don't have any sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that can be eliminated from the mind. Again, most of the time people think it's the outside world that's causing these feelings, but what you're going to see today is it's not the outside world that's causing these feelings, and that's why you can eliminate these feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind's going to be performing optimally, that you'll see that you have focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. By uprooting these pollutions out of the mind, by purification of the mind will perform more optimally. And you'll gradually see this as occurring. You'll notice that you have deep wisdom about the world around you that other people don't have. And you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations. In the unenlightened state, you'll find this to be challenging. There's certain situations where you'll be impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful. But you can change all of that. You can improve that. Again, people think that is being caused by other people, but it's actually your own decisions that are leading to that impoliteness, that unkindness, unfriendliness, and disrespect. And you can actually train your mind to not do that. You'll get to the point where you're not causing any harm in the world, and all your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming. That you'll see that your relationships are really at ease, because in the unenlightened state, you'll have certain relationships that are kind of a challenge, that you'll really struggle and have difficulties, because in those relationships where you're experiencing this resentment, this hostility and bitterness, you'll put that out, and that's what'll come back to you. But by the time you train your mind, you'll see all your relationships will be harmonious. You don't have harshness, hostility, and bitterness in your mind anymore. And since that's no longer coming out, the people around you, it'll be so easy to get along with people. But when you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, you can't get along with them, and you'll find that your relationships have a certain amount of disharmony. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll notice that you've improved that. You'll get to a point where you don't even have a bad mood any longer, that it's physically impossible for an enlightened being to experience a bad mood. The way this is occurring in this purification that I'm talking about here, this purification of the mind, it's coming through eliminating what's called craving, anger, and ignorance. These are referred to as the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires. This is a high-level way to refer to the pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. The deepest level of detail that the Buddha talks about with these pollutions, he refers to them as the 10 fetters. These are 10 individual pollutions in the mind. The reason why they're called a fetter is because during his lifetime, if you were someone that they were interested in keeping confined to a certain area, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. What a fetter is a shackle and a chain and a ball. And then they would just keep you out in this field, where today we put people in jail cells or prison cells, and that's how we keep them confined. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was this fetter, this shackle, chain, and ball. So when he discovers these 10 pollutions in the mind, he calls them a fetter, because it keeps the mind trapped in this unenlightened state, continuing to experience anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again. But just like a prisoner, when you release that shackle off the ankle, the individual's free, they're liberated, they can roam about the world as they like. The same thing is true with the mind, that when you get these 10 fetters, these pollutions out of the mind is now free. It's liberated. Because when you're angry and sad and frustrated and having all these other feelings, the mind is bound up. It's stuck. And it's no fun to live life that way. So you can actually eliminate that from the mind. So the deepest level of detail is called the 10 fetters. But when we talk about it as a high level, we talk about it as craving, anger, and ignorance. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an introduction to this so you'll understand what these are. And then in the future classes, I'll help you to understand this in more detail, as well as the 10 fetters as well. But I'll just introduce you to this. What craving is where the mind's longing, yearning. It's chasing after the objects of its affection. It's thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind will chase it and chase it and chase it. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst that the mind has. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets really happy and excited. It gets pleasant feelings about that. But if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So for example, if you look outside and it's sunny, you might get really happy and excited about that. But then when it rains, your mind is experiencing sadness or frustration or some other irritation or something like this. Or say you're walking in the mall and you see that a store has some brand new pair of shoes and you're like, oh, those shoes would look so awesome if I got those shoes. Oh, they're going to be so amazing on my feet. And you get so excited about these new shoes. But then you go into the store and you ask for your size and they don't have your size shoes. And now you get angry or frustrated because the mind's not getting what it wants. Or maybe your bank account balance is up here and you get really happy and excited about that. But then when it goes down here, you get sad or frustrated. The only thing that's happening here is change, that things are changing and the world is full of change. But the mind craves permanence while it's living in an impermanent world. So that craving, that longing, that yearning, that chasing after the objects of your affection, that unquenchable thirst, the mind pulling towards the objects of its affection, it can only be happy if it gets what it wants. But then when it's not getting what it wants, these painful feelings come into the mind. And the mind firmly believes that this is coming from something external. This is where the anger and the frustration and the agitation comes up in the mind. This is the second poison, the second pollution of mind, the second defilement or the second unwholesome root. When this anger is coming up in the mind becomes bitter and harsh and hostile. It firmly believes that something external is causing this, and you'll tend to be unskillful. You'll tend to push people away. This is called aversion, where you might have pushed away friends or family out of your life, or you might have pushed away a certain situation. Or the second thing you'll do when you don't understand that your own mind is causing these feelings is that you'll tend to be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like growling and roaring at another being. And this is the mind trying to fear that person into doing things your way. Or the third thing you'll do is you'll tend to put your expectations on people and try to pressure them to get them to do things your way. And people might actually be doing this to you too, where they're pushing you away. They're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're putting their expectations on you and trying to pressure you to do things a certain way. And this is coming from the mind's craving, right? That the craving is in there. The mind's longing, yearning can only be happy if it gets what it wants. And because you live in an impermanent world, you're not going to always get what you want. And now when this anger and this frustration is coming up, it will push people away. It'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or it'll put its expectations on people and try to pressure them. And where that's all coming from is this third one. Oftentimes people refer to it as ignorance. I use this phrase, unknowing of true reality, because the word ignorance is like a derogatory word. It's a diminishing word. And the Buddha wouldn't have used that because we're translating what he said into English, but people are translating it in ways that aren't necessarily accurate, because an enlightened being wouldn't refer to someone as ignorant or stupid or as foolish, but you'll see people that are translating that way. A better way to think about this one is the lack of wisdom, the confusion, the misunderstanding, the unknowing of true reality. Because the mind doesn't truly understand how the mind works, it continues to crave and it continues to have anger and frustration. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality, this lack of wisdom, that the mind continues to crave and it continues to have anger. So that's why on this path to enlightenment, the ultimate goal is to cultivate wisdom. That's what it means to awaken or to be awake, is that you're cultivating wisdom. And what you're cultivating wisdom about is these natural laws of existence. The Buddha taught these natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. The main natural law that the Buddha is helping you to awaken to or cultivate wisdom about is called the natural law of Gotama. You might have heard this referred to as karma. This is the Sanskrit version of this word, but the original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, so people who study his teachings will tend to use this word Gotama. If this translated to just one English word, I would use it because it'd be easier for everyone to be able to understand this. But instead, I still need to use this word because it doesn't translate to just one English word. What the word Gotama means is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. What the Buddha is helping you to be able to see is that when you make decisions wisely, you will experience wholesome Gotama, or wholesome results. And when you make decisions unwisely, you will experience unwholesome results, or unwholesome Gotama. There's natural laws that are affecting all of us, whether we're aware of these natural laws or not. And when you cultivate wisdom about these natural laws, you'll tend to navigate the world more peacefully and more joyfully. When you're angry, when you're having stress or anxiety or frustration, that's the mind living in a world that it doesn't understand. It's struggling and having difficulties in the world because it doesn't understand this world that it lives in. It's like when we were children. We didn't understand the natural law of gravity. So we struggled and we had difficulties. We fell down, we hit our elbows, we bumped our head, we broke our toys, and we cried and we cried and we cried. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom about this natural law. We never believed in this natural law of gravity. We can actually see the truth for ourselves. We can see. There it is. Right? We can see it with our own eyes. Nobody's believing in the natural law of gravity. So what we did is we gradually cultivated wisdom about this natural law, and now we make wiser and wiser decisions, and we don't struggle with it anymore. This is why we tie our shoes a little bit tighter. We look at the surface of the sidewalk. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around like a little kid all the time, because we learned a wise way to interact in the world. But there's other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. And when you cultivate wisdom about those natural laws, you'll make wiser decisions that produce more wholesome results. This is why now we can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world, because you might say we fully awoke to the natural law of gravity. So these other natural laws that the Buddha is teaching you, you need to awaken to them. Because right now, if you kind of fell down on the floor, you'd probably start laughing. Right? You probably think it's funny, perhaps, as long as you didn't hurt yourself, right? You probably start laughing, ha, 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 ha. Whereas a kid, we didn't do that. We were so upset. We were so frustrated because we didn't understand this world. So when your mind's angry and sad and stressed and having anxiety, it's your mind living in a world that you don't understand. So the Buddha's teachings are helping you to cultivate wisdom. That's why you don't believe any of his teachings. With belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're either believing something because somebody convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. You need to be able to see the truth. So all the teachings of the Buddha are based in independent verification. You need to independently verify whether this teaching is true or whether it's false. And I'm going to show you how to do that when we get into the Four Noble Truths today. So you're awakening and cultivating wisdom to be able to learn, investigate, and examine his teachings. You're examining what they are intellectually. Then you're reflecting on those teachings to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you're practicing his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life and making decisions through those teachings that you've learned. And this is where you cultivate wisdom and you can see the actual truth, because you're going to see the condition of your mind in your life gradually improving. That you're going to see that certain situations where you're angry and frustrated and upset, you'll be in those same exact situations and you'll see your mind's quite peaceful and quite joyful in that situation. And you'll know it's these teachings that are leading to that. And that's where you fully cultivate wisdom and you can see that the teachings are actually working. So the Buddha didn't explain how the world should be, right? And if everybody follows these rules and commandments, then the world would become a better place. He's not teaching you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. And by understanding the way the world is, now you can awaken or cultivate wisdom about these natural laws, and then you can navigate the world peacefully. So you're training your mind to experience this complete joy through acquiring wisdom of these natural laws. And now with the wisdom of those natural laws, you'll gradually eradicate these pollutions out of the mind. And that's where the peace and the joy starts coming through more and more. Sometimes we talk about it as attaining enlightenment, that you're attaining enlightenment. But one of the ways that you might think about it is that your mind's already enlightened. That it's already enlightened. It's just got these pollutions that are in the way. They just got to get out of the way. And when you get these pollutions out of the way, the qualities of enlightenment can shine through more and more. It's kind of like there's the sun and there's these clouds that are in front of the sun. And if you peel away the clouds, the rays of the sun will shine through more and more. The sun is always there. It's just that the clouds were blocking it. You couldn't experience the qualities of the sun. But when you get rid of the clouds, the qualities of the sun will shine through. So it's the same thing with your mind. When you get rid of these pollutions, the qualities of enlightenment will shine through. The only difference in the analogy is that the clouds are going to come back. Right? But by the time you get rid of these pollutions out of the mind, they won't ever come back. They're completely gone out of the mind. Your mind will be permanently peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The teachings of the Buddha are timeless. He spoke clear, concise, and precise. You won't have to interpret his teachings or figure out what it was that he was saying. He just speaks very clear, very concise, and very precise. And they're timeless because these natural laws haven't changed. It's the same natural laws that existed 2,500 years ago that exist today. So what he described as these natural laws, it's the same exact natural laws. And that's what you need to cultivate wisdom about. And that's what's going to lead to your awakening. The Buddha did teach about the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence of hell, animal realm, the afflicted spirits, human realm, and heavenly realm. But I suggest that you set these things aside when you first get started. Not because they're not important, because it's just not something that you need to learn and understand right up front at the beginning of your journey to enlightenment. He taught these things for a reason, and I hope you to understand what that reason is. And you never are interested in believing these things. These things can be independently verified. This cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence, you might not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but you can cultivate the wisdom of how to independently verify this. Right now, you might be believing you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life, other than the fact that maybe right now you can't remember your previous lives. But as you're training your mind and you're lifting this pollution out of your mind, you might actually start having vivid memories of your past lives. This is one of the reasons why the Buddha taught the cycle of rebirth. Because if you start having vivid memories of, say, being murdered, you know that that wasn't in this life. And maybe this is just replaying in your mind over and over and over and over again. This could really shake you up if you didn't understand that this was from your past life, right? Also, another thing is these 5 realms of existence. Some people can see these beings. Hell beings are formless beings. They don't have physical form. The afflicted spirits, these are ghosts. They don't have physical form. And the heavenly beings, they also don't have physical form either. And oftentimes people think of these beings as being in some far distant land somewhere, like hell beings deep down in the core of the earth or heavenly beings way up in the sky. This isn't actually true. We're all in the same time and space. Just like we're human here and there's a human being sitting in this chair. If I got up and left, there could easily be an animal that comes and sits here, like a squirrel or a rabbit or a cockroach or something like that. That's probably more common, right? A cockroach could come and sit here in this chair, right? So we're all in the same time and space. Hell beings, afflicted spirits, which are ghosts, and heavenly beings. So some people can actually see these beings with their eyes, even though they're formless. And again, if you didn't understand this is the way the world truly is, it could really shake you up. And then lastly, some people can actually hear communication from these beings, that they can actually hear these beings talking. And again, you could think that you're going crazy if you didn't understand that that was the case. So the Buddha taught these things for a reason, because it's actually true. And this is the way the world actually functions. But you need to be able to get to a point where you're not believing in this stuff, but you can actually independently verify it for yourself. In our book series here, we have 13 books. In volume 11, chapter 105, I have 17 different criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because that's usually the better time to approach this. So I suggest people just set this aside, because there's core central teachings that you would really like to focus on. And if you focus on those, that's what's going to help you to start seeing all this improvement to your mind and your life. And then in the future, you can approach this and be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence. The Buddha taught about this being of God. Oftentimes people think that the Buddha didn't teach about this being. You actually hear some people say that the Buddha rejected God, or he denied the existence of God, or some people say he refused to answer the question. This isn't actually true. If you look in his if you look in his teachings, he actually taught about this being of God, but he didn't put God at the center of his teachings, because it's not God who determines whether or not you get to enlightenment or not. It's your decisions that determine whether you get to enlightenment. So he actually put you in the center of his teachings, but he does teach about this being. He helps you to understand what this being is and how this being functions, but he never teaches you to worship this being. He never says to believe in this being. He just helps you to understand that this being exists. So you could actually get to enlightenment with a relationship with this being, but you're going to need to understand certain things that you probably don't understand right now. Or you could get to enlightenment without a relationship with this being. It's just like your neighbor. You could have a relationship with your neighbor, and it's kind of nice to have a relationship with your neighbor, because when you go on holiday or something like that, they can look over your house, or if you need to borrow some sugar or some salt, you can just pop over next door and be like, hey, can I borrow some sugar? Can I borrow some salt? Right? So it's kind of nice to have a relationship with your neighbor. But you can get along just fine without a relationship with your neighbor. And it's the same thing with this being. You can choose to have a relationship with this being if you like, but you could also choose not to, and you would be just fine on the path to enlightenment. So the Buddha did teach about this being. The largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha are in something called the Pali Canon. There's 45 volumes of books that are about this thick that are the largest, most complete collection we have of the teachings of the Buddha. It's referred to as the Pali Canon because it's in the Pali language. This is no longer a spoken language. It's not used any longer, but originally it was captured, at least the version that we have, was in the Pali Canon, or the Pali language. So we call it the Pali Canon. What we've done as part of this community is we've consolidated this into 13 books, because 45 large volumes of books this thick it would take you a really long time to make your way through that. The average person doesn't actually even have access to the Pali Canon because it's so expensive to print out. So for all these many centuries, people haven't really necessarily been studying the original words of the Buddha. Because like here in Thailand, it would cost about 3 months of your salary to be able to have a version of the Pali Canon. And you probably don't own any book collections worth 3 months of your salary. So the average person actually doesn't study the original words of the Buddha, but it would be wise for you to do so. Because if you're not studying his original words, you would never actually be able to make your way to enlightenment. So because of this issue of being so vast and so expensive, what we've done is we've consolidated it and then we make it available for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it yourself. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing costs, or you can order it on Amazon. In this book series will help to guide you on this path. So this is the best way to actually get started, is to actually study with his original teachings. And we refer to this as the words of the Buddha, the path to enlightenment, revealing the hidden, because these teachings have been hidden for a long time. Not overtly hidden, but kind of inadvertently hidden. So that's why we call it revealing the hidden, bringing forth the teachings of the Buddha. So lastly, before I open up to questions on this, the teachings of the Buddha, what they are, is they are to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. That's one of the ways that I think about his teachings, is that you're doing this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development, becoming a better person, moving to this higher consciousness where you're training your mind to be able to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But oftentimes what people think is hurting them is they think it's the outside world. So they're maybe trying to fix the outside world and try to change the outside world, where in reality, what you need to do is change the inner world, do the work on the inner mind. Because everything you experience comes through the mind. And if you train your mind, you can get to a point where things are completely peaceful and joyful in your life. So the teachings of the Buddha are to heal from what hurts you so you never need to hurt ever again. So do you guys have any questions on what the teachings of the Buddha are? You have questions? Yeah.
I'm just interested in when you were talking about God was discussed in the Pali Canon. Is that also mentioned in any of your books?
Yes. So in volume 1, chapter 18, I have some details in there. That whole chapter is devoted to helping you understand this being, how to either get to enlightenment with a relationship or without. But then and I have some discourses from the Buddha in that chapter, but in terms of like the most content from the Buddha about this being of God, it's in volume 11. It's a very thick volume and has a lot of other stuff too. It's not just about God, but you'll see it kind of sprinkled throughout the entire Pali Canon. But in our book series, volume 11 has the most from the words of the Buddha about this being of God. But it's best to read volume 1, chapter 18 first to kind of prepare you for what you're going to see in the other parts of the book series.
Thank you. And my other question is about the Pali Canon. Is the Pali Canon just like recollections of the Buddhist discourses, or is it more than that? For example, as you know, I'm a bit interested in the stories of the past lives of the Buddha. Are they a part of the Pali Canon, or is that separate?
Yeah, it is. So there's 3 sections to the Pali Canon. There's what I share here, which is called the suttas or the discourses. That's the actual teachings of the Buddha. And that's what you would really like to be studying, is the suttas. Then there's what's called the Dhammapada, which is actually considered to be part of the Pali Canon, but it wasn't spoken by the Buddha. What this is a work that was created about 1,200 years after the death of the Buddha, where scholars got together and they kind of looked at the suttas, the original discourses, and they tried to summarize them in verse form. You could read that, but I don't necessarily recommend it because it's more poetic and you can't really independently verify a lot of it. And but unfortunately, a lot of people, they read that one, but that's not the original words of the Buddha. And then the third section of the Pali Canon is the part that's for the ordained practitioners, about, how to wear your robe and how to walk and to not be in contact with someone of the opposite gender and stuff like this, like some of the guidance for them to be able to function as an ordained practitioner. So what you would really be interested in is the suttas, and that's what this is over here. And that's why we were able to consolidate it too, because there was a lot of repetition in the Pali Canon where you could have like 100 pages and it's the same paragraph being repeated over and over and over again with like one word that's changing. So by taking out the repetition, you can actually consolidate it into these 13 books.
Turn off for this. So that with the Dhammapada, is that where, like, there's lots of streams of discussions about Buddhism that are quite figurative, where what you teach is quite clear and simple, although a bit difficult. But there's all this sort of imagery and figurative.
It's on. It's just, yeah, it's not from the Dhammapada. What it is that from the life of the Buddha, where he died 2,500 years ago, there's been modifications that people have made to his teachings, or just not even his teachings at all. So the first 500 years after his death, people were very strong in their union and they were getting to enlightenment quite a bit. But after that 500-year mark, people started branching off and creating their own things. So this is why you see such variety. You'll see Theravada Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism. You'll see rituals and ceremonies introduced. You'll see deity worship and worshiping deities and all these kind of things. You'll see prayer, which the Buddha never taught any of that kind of stuff. But people are calling it Buddhism, even though we can't call it Buddhism because the Buddha never actually taught it. But you'll see those things. So all that colorful imagery with like all these deities and different things, that's not from the actual Buddha. That's from these other strands that are referring to themselves as Buddhism, but we can't really accurately call that Buddhism because there was only one Buddha and there was only one collection of teachings, and it's his original words that are his teachings. And all this worship and deity worship and stuff, that's not from the Buddha. Okay. I don't see any other questions anywhere. So now one of the ways that I teach is I teach you what something is, and then I also teach you what something is not. That's what I'm going to teach you, is what the teachings of the Buddha are not. This is one of the ways to help you to understand what the teachings of the Buddha are. So the Buddha's teachings are not a collection of beliefs, doctrine, concepts, opinions, and views that will produce a pleasant afterlife if you believe in them, and an unpleasant afterlife if you don't believe in them. In fact, the Buddha's teachings aren't about an afterlife at all. He's teaching you to be able to get to peace and joy now in this life. It's not about what's going to happen next. It's about this life and getting to a wonderful life now. That's what he's guiding you towards. And his teachings aren't beliefs. They're not opinions. They're not views. It's not something that you agree with or disagree with. It's something that you learn and you investigate and examine to be able to independently verify. And you can independently verify his teachings. So he's not sharing his opinions and views. He's helping you to be able to understand these natural laws. And because you live in this world, once you understand the natural laws, you start studying them and examining them and investigating them, you'll be able to independently verify them through observation in the world around you. Depending on how you think about religion, I would say that the teachings of the Buddha are not a religion, but it really comes down to how you think about a religion. If you think about a religion as one person at the top who's telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing, or if you think about religion as rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, or that a religion has rules and commandments that everyone must follow in order to create a peaceful world, well, if this is the way you think about religion, the teachings of the Buddha aren't a religion, because there isn't one person at the top of Buddhism telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing. There aren't any rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship as part of the original teachings of the Buddha. And he didn't teach rules and commandments. He's teaching you about these natural laws that you can independently verify. So I would say that the teachings of the Buddha are not a religion. Also, if you've been taught about like punishments and rewards, and that's the way that you've been taught through a collection of teachings like this, the Buddha never does that. He doesn't explain things in that way. So his teachings are not punishments and rewards. They're also not mystical or magical or superstitious or auspicious. Sometimes you'll hear people do that. They'll say, here, chant this special chant. If you chant this special chant, your boyfriend or girlfriend's going to come back to you. Okay, right? That's not true. Or chant this special chant. You're going to get rich and wealthy, right? Well, if this was the case, don't you think that would have spread like wildfire by now, right? We've had 2,500 years of history. If the Buddha would have taught something 2,500 years ago that you'd instantly get wealthy if you chant this special chant, that would have spread like wildfire. Because think about it. You go to a nice restaurant, you have a really good meal. How many people do you tell? You probably tell 3, 4, 5, 10 different people, right? We've had plenty of time for something like that to spread. The teachings of the Buddha aren't anything mystical or magical or superstitious or auspicious. Also, his teachings aren't something to attempt to force others or convince other people to do. Sometimes that's what people do is they come to a place like this, they load you up with a bunch of beliefs, and then they send you out into the world to convince other people to believe those same things. That's not the way that the teachings of the Buddha work. The teachings of the Buddha are for you to learn, grow, and develop. It's not about going out into the world and convincing other people to do things. It's about you learning and growing. And as you learn and grow and develop and you become more peaceful, people are going to ask you, what are you doing? Right? And now that's how it actually spreads. Because think about it. If you were sitting in your house and you were eating this big piece of chocolate cake with a big smile on your face, and some of your friends or family walked by and they saw you, they'd be like, where'd you get that piece of chocolate cake? Right? Well, if all of a sudden you're starting to become more and more peaceful and more joyful, you're smiling more, you're laughing more, your relationships are going so well, people are going to be like, where'd you get that peacefulness? Where'd you get that joy? And it's like, oh, I got it from the teachings of the Buddha. Really? Where can I get some of that? Right? That's what you're going to hear. So you don't have to go out into the world and convince people or force people to try to do this. They're going to do it naturally when they see that you're becoming more peaceful and more joyful. Also, the Buddha's teachings aren't these short, catchy phrases that are going to produce some sort of benefit in your life. If you spend any time on social media, you might see a little meme that says like, blah, 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 the Buddha, right? If you research these things, about 99.9% of the time, they're actually not from the Buddha at all. That the Buddha never said those things, that this is kind of a modern quote in the last 100 years or 200 years, and somebody slapped the words the Buddha on there in order to be able to give it credibility. So the Buddha doesn't have these short little catchy phrases. When you study his teachings, you're going to see his teachings are very deep and very meaningful, that it's going to take you time to really grasp what it is. You're going to need to really wrap your arms around it and look at it and really analyze it. So he doesn't have these little short catchy phrases. And then lastly, the teachings of the Buddha aren't teachings that are stuck in a cultural past that degrades or denigrates or judges any particular person or group of people. Because sometimes people think, well, the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago. Surely he denigrated women, right? He looked down on women. He thought they were less of a person. No, not at all. You won't see that anywhere in his teachings, that he teaches everybody to respect everybody. Sometimes people are like, well, surely he talked bad about same-gender relationships, right? No, he didn't at all. He didn't teach anything like that. He taught you to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody. So he taught men how to be respectful to women. He taught women how to be respectful to men. He taught everybody is equal. He never taught this hierarchical structure that you see people introducing into the world today. That's not the way that the Buddha taught. So you won't see him denigrating or degrading any group of people. In fact, his teachings aren't even based in culture. If you follow culture, you'll never get to enlightenment, because what culture is this group of people have decided that this is polite, and this group of people have decided that is impolite, right? And now different people think different ways. So if you practice culture, you could go into a particular culture and you could learn that culture, and maybe everybody that's in that culture thinks you're just wonderful and everything's going great. But if you go outside that culture and you do things differently, there could be other people that are like, oh my gosh, this person's so rude and so impolite, right? So like in some places, it would be rude to slurp your noodles, right? But there's other countries that if you slurp your noodles, that's the most polite thing you could do for the chef, and send a message to the chef that, hey, this was a really good meal, right? So this is culture. You're not interested in practicing culture. What Buddha is teaching you is the natural laws which cut through culture. I've practiced these same teachings in places like Mexico, the USA. I've been to places like Egypt or other places in the Middle East, right? I've been here in Asia. I can practice these same exact teachings everywhere, and everything's completely fine. Because if you understand the natural laws, then it cuts through culture and you're doing what is wise based on the natural laws, not based on culture. So the Buddha never degraded or denigrated anybody, and he didn't teach based in culture. He taught based on the natural laws. So do you guys have any questions on what the teachings of the Buddha are not? Yes, sir. Would you mind getting a mic? The people online will really appreciate that.
Hello. Can you define what is mystical?
Mystical would be like some superstitious or auspicious thing where it's just kind of like magical or mystical, where it's not based in true reality. It's not based in any truth. It's just kind of a belief that people are believing is something mystical.
Is it, like the word mystery? Is it the same Latin root, miss?
Yes, I think so. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then also like you said that the Buddha did not teach any distinction between men and women. But if you go to temples, even here in Chiang Mai, like there's certain areas that say women cannot come in here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have like the monks, they have like over 300 rules they follow. And the nuns, women cannot be a monk. And then you have the nuns, and the nuns only have, I think, 8 rules. And so where did that come from?
Yeah, let me help you to understand that what you're thinking is not 100% true, but also there's been some modifications that people are understanding. So each temple is independently operated. Each temple can decide how they're going to set things up. And based on the leader of that temple, they're going to set things up according to what that leader understands. So each one of these temples are set up independently and operated independently. So there's one temple here in the city that says women aren't allowed. That's what that temple is choosing to do. That's not what the Buddha actually taught. So oftentimes what the Buddha taught and what people are doing are oftentimes completely different and completely separate. So you need to be able to see what did the Buddha teach and what he didn't teach. And that's what I'm sharing with you. But don't believe me. You can look for yourself and you can see where the Buddha taught equality and he taught all people are equal. And then in terms of ordination, the Buddha ordained females and he ordained males. But here in Thailand, predominantly what you see is ordained males, but they actually have ordained females too. There's not very many. There's only about 300 to 400 here in Chiang Mai. Here in Thailand. And they have a temple down in Bangkok. And they actually have 311 precepts where the men have 227. But this is not what the Buddha was actually creating. He didn't create 227 precepts. He didn't create 311 precepts. That's what people did after him. He created 150 precepts. And that's what the ordained practitioners were practicing during his time, whether you were male or whether you were female. You were practicing 150. So when Buddhism came to Thailand 800 to 1200 years ago, it came what we think is from Sri Lanka. And when it traveled from Sri Lanka, it traveled by sea. So when it came over from Sri Lanka to Thailand, the men came, but the women actually didn't come. So predominantly here in Thailand, it's always been male ordained practitioners ever since the beginning. But about 20 years ago, there was a woman who was interested in becoming ordained, and she knew that the Buddha ordained women because you can see it very clearly in his teachings. So she went back to Sri Lanka because in Sri Lanka and other places that are closer to the original source of the Buddha, they actually have females. Where here in Thailand, because it traveled by sea, the females never came because it came by sea. So that's why we don't have a predominant number of females here. But in places in Sri Lanka and other places, you'll see a lot more female ordained practitioners. So the Buddha taught all people are equal. He taught the same number of precepts, whether you're male or female. He didn't teach the things that you're seeing. So it's important to make sure you understand that what you're seeing and what the Buddha taught are oftentimes very different. And that's why I encourage people to go back to the original teachings so you can see the truth for yourself and you're not misled by what you're seeing in the world today. Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? Let me check online here. I don't see anything online. Okay. So what I usually do at this point is we take like a little break for you guys to be able to spend some time with each other, get to know each other, maybe stretch your legs, use the bathroom, get a snack and these kinds of things. And then after the break, I'm going to come back and I'm going to teach the very first teaching of the Buddha, where you can learn what is the problem that he discovered in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And I'm going to walk you through this way in a way that you can independently verify it for yourself. So right now it's basically about 2:20. So why don't we take like a break all the way up to 2:45, and then I'll pick this up at 2:45. So thank you guys for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn, and I'll see you guys at 2:45. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. then you'll understand more. So let me help you guys to understand this. So welcome back to you guys. We're going to dive into the Four Noble Truths, where this is, again, the very first teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha would start every single new student with this particular teaching, because this is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding what is the problem in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward in a way that you can independently verify. So what I'm going to teach you here, don't believe anything that I have to share. I'm going to show you how to learn, investigate, and examine this. I'm going to teach you how to reflect on it to verify if it's true or false. And then I'm going to teach you how to practice it so you can integrate it into your day-to-day life and experience the real results. This teaching of the Four Noble Truths, it actually is the very first teaching of something called the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha, that everything he taught in one way or another is integrated into this particular teaching. So what I'm going to be teaching you here is called right view. This is the very first step of this core central teaching. And just like always, I'm going to open up to questions. So if you guys have questions, you have the microphones here. And for those of you guys online, you can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask questions that you like there. So we're going to penetrate into this right view, helping you to understand what this is and what the Buddha actually taught here, because this sets the foundation for everything else it is that the Buddha taught. Without understanding right view, you wouldn't be able to understand anything else that the Buddha actually taught. To be able to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the three universal truths. These are like building blocks to help you to be able to understand the Four Noble Truths. So I'm going to teach you these first, and then I'll teach you the Four Noble Truths. We call them the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true as well, but you need to know that they're true. And that's why you don't believe any of these teachings. The Buddha encouraged students to be able to listen with eager ears, where you're actively working to understand what it is that he's teaching, so that then your mind can come to understand this wisdom. So for example, this first universal truth, it's called the universal truth of impermanence. Remember, the Buddha is teaching you not the way the world should be, he's teaching you the way the world is. So what he's teaching you in this first universal truth is that the world is impermanent, that things are constantly changing, that there's something called conditioned objects, and these conditioned objects arise, they change, and then they fade away. This is anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, they are all impermanent. They're constantly changing. They arise, they change, and they fade away. They're called conditioned objects. Then there's something called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they do not change, and they do not fade away. They are actually permanent. And there's basically two. There's the natural laws of existence. Those are unconditioned. They don't change. And enlightenment itself. When you attain the enlightened mental state, it is a permanent mental state because your mind is then unconditioned. That qualities that you experience, they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. But everything else in the world around you is constantly changing because it's a conditioned object, that it arises, changes, and fades away. Okay, so this is a little bit of the intellectual learning on the universal truth of impermanence, but you don't believe that. Don't believe it. You just intellectually understand what it is that I shared. But now you move into reflection. To reflect on something, you need to look around the world to be able to determine if it's true or if it's false. And you've lived in this world long enough, you can actually do this reflection. So what I suggest you do is you start with things that you're familiar with, like the human body. You're very familiar with this human body. Ask yourself, is it permanent, meaning it's been exactly the same your entire life, or is this human body constantly changing, meaning it's impermanent? So what would you say? Is this body permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? Ever since the egg and sperm came together, this body has been constantly changing. We get taller, we get shorter, we get bigger, we get smaller, right? We get pimples and wrinkles and moles, we get gray hair, we start losing our hair. This is all change. The body's constantly changing. When we were first born, we didn't have teeth, and then teeth came in, right? That's change. And then those teeth fell out. That's change. And then new teeth grew in. That's change. And now we maybe get cavities from time to time. That's change too. So that your body is constantly changing. What about your relationships? If your relationships are permanent, that means you've had exactly the same people in your life, your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, you've had people coming and going in and out of your life. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? They're constantly changing. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent. Yeah. Some people's bank account goes up and down and up and down, right? Some people's goes up, up, up. That's change, right? Some people's go down, 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 right? That's change too, right? What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's raining. Some places it's snowing, sleeting, ice. We have maybe hurricanes or typhoons, things like this. Things are constantly changing. So we could go on and on and on like this. And if you need to do that, I suggest you do. Look around the world and try to find something that's permanent. You'll be able to see everything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or that goes through your mind is constantly changing. When you look at the tree and you see that there's green leaves in the tree and brown leaves on the ground, that's change. That's impermanence. When you look at the wood planks on the floor, you can see some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, some of them are one color, some of them are a different color. That's change. You see, we started out our class with a certain number of people, and we then had new people that came. And then from there, we've had some people that have left. This is just change, right? It's impermanence. Things are constantly changing. When you're walking down the street and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that is change, right? Here in Thailand, some roads have sidewalks, some roads don't, right? Some sidewalks you have to actually walk up, some you have to walk down. It's not a flat sidewalk, right? So this is all constant change. So you need to be able to independently verify this for yourself. And this is a building block when we get to the Four Noble Truths. The second one here is called discontentedness. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have heard the word suffering being used here. I'm going to teach you what the Buddha taught here, and then I'm going to circle back and help you understand why I don't use the word suffering, because it's not the accurate representation of what the Buddha was teaching on this important topic. So the original word in the Pali Canon is the word dukkha. This translates to discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. The Buddha describes three feelings that you'll experience as an unenlightened being. And these are called conditioned feelings, that you're going to experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. And these are based on some condition. So, for example, a conditioned pleasant feeling is things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. And it's based on some condition. Maybe you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside. That's the condition. Now there's this happiness or excitement in the mind. But then there's these painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are very painful to experience, and those are based on some condition too. Then there's the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's quite painful for them. So you could put it in the painful category if you like, but shyness is a good example. It's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Or maybe if you were on public transportation and somebody you didn't know came and sat really, really close to you and your body's touching their body, you might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Your mind's uncomfortable or dissatisfied in that situation. So these are what's called conditioned feelings, that based on a condition, the mind is now going to experience this. So an unenlightened being, they'll wake up in the morning and they'll see it's sunny outside and they'll get really happy, really excited. They'll be like, yay, I'm going to go hiking. There's this hiking trail I've been wanting to go on. I just can't wait to go. Oh, I'm going to call my friends. It's going to be so much fun. Oh, I just can't wait, right? And now they'll go take a shower. And then when they come out, it's raining. And it's like, oh, I can't go hiking. I'm so frustrated. I'm so angry, right? Well, if you base your happiness on the sun, and the sun is not permanent, that means your happiness is not permanent, right? That's why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness or permanent joy, because your mind is experiencing conditioned feelings. You're basing your feelings on something that is impermanent. So therefore, how could you ever get to a permanent state of happiness or joy if you're basing your feelings on something that's impermanent? So an enlightened being, their mind doesn't function this way. When they wake up in the morning, they're already happy. There doesn't need to be any condition met. This is called unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy, that your mind is just already happy when you wake up in the morning. Now you see it's sunny outside and you're like, wow, it's sunny. Man, there's this hiking trail I've been interested to go on. This is going to be great. I'm going to call my friends. We're going to have a blast. And now you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining. It's like, it's raining. Well, guess I'm not going hiking. Maybe I'll stay home. Maybe I'll go to the mall. Maybe I'll invite my friends over. We can make some food. Maybe I'll stay home and read a book. You can maintain your happiness because your happiness wasn't based on the sun. But an unenlightened being is experiencing conditional feelings. So the Buddha is explaining to you here what the unenlightened mind is experiencing, that it's happy and excited, but then it's sad and frustrated or irritated. Then you're feeling shy and lonely and bored. Then you're feeling guilt and shame and fear. And there's some peacefulness here and there, but it's only a matter of time before you become annoyed or frustrated about something. So this is what an unenlightened being is experiencing, conditioned feelings. An enlightened being is beyond this, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But first, you can independently verify this. Because remember, this is a universal truth. You're not interested in believing this, right? So you know that your mind is unenlightened, that you experience certain feelings that the Buddha is describing. So ask yourself, is this what you experience? Do you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant? Are there any feelings that you experience that don't fit into one of these three categories? Because if there is, we can talk about it when we get to the question period, and I'll help you. So here, the Buddha is explaining the unenlightened mind and what you experience. And this is helpful for you to understand. Because what the Buddha is guiding you to is where you don't experience conditioned feelings, that instead you experience unconditioned mental qualities, where you get beyond conditioned feelings, that your mind is always happy, it's always joyful, it's always cheerful, it's always bright and uplifted. But you can't do that as long as your mind's experiencing conditioned feelings, that if your mind is untrained, it will form its feelings based on external circumstances. And then when those circumstances change, the mind doesn't like that, and now you'll experience other feelings. So you'll understand this more when we get to the Four Noble Truths. But here, this is the problem that the Buddha discovered, that the unenlightened mind is going up and down and up and down and up and down. It's only a matter of time before the mind becomes shaken up. So the mind, when it's experiencing discontentedness, it can't make wise decisions, that you need to be able to make wise decisions to be able to experience wholesome results in your day-to-day life. So again, here, this is pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. And the Buddha is teaching you to get beyond this. So I use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness here, because it brings your mind to the full understanding of what the Buddha was teaching. The word suffering that a lot of people use, it explains the painful feelings really well. That when you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration in these others, probably say you were suffering. But let's just say your boss walked into your office and said, hey, you're doing an outstanding job. I'm going to give you $100,000 more per year in your paycheck. And you got really happy and excited about that. Would you say you were suffering? Probably not, right? Or say that you're maybe on public transportation and that person you don't know comes and sits really close to you and your body's touching their body. Would you say you were suffering in that situation? Probably not. So if you use this word suffering, it's not bringing your mind to the full understanding of what the Buddha is describing here. He's describing conditioned feelings. So you ultimately need to be able to see that these conditioned pleasant feelings are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. It's pretty intuitive to be able to understand that you're going to eliminate anger, sadness, frustration, and all these others. But when I start talking about the elimination of things like happiness, excitement, and elation, people are like, hold on a second, David, hold on a second. I'm not sure if I'm interested in enlightenment. But what you need to understand is what we're talking about is conditional happiness, conditional excitement, meaning your mind can only be happy if certain conditions are met. Because in the unenlightened state, the mind will have certain conditions. It's kind of like if my mom and dad do this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if my boss does this, if the weather is like this, and the bank account is like this, and I have this kind of house and this kind of car, then I will be happy. So your happiness is actually shrinking the more conditions that you have. This is why some people are old and grumpy. Not all people are old and grumpy, but some people are old and grumpy because they have all these conditions, all these expectations of things that they want in order to be happy. So that's conditional happiness. That is displeasing because it's temporary. What the Buddha is guiding you towards is unconditional happiness, unconditioned joy, where you get beyond the conditionality of these feelings. But as long as you allow your mind to experience conditioned feelings, you'll never actually get to the unconditioned mental states. So you need to be able to see that the conditioned feelings are the pleasant ones are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. Because if you allow your mind to get a conditioned pleasant feeling, the painful ones are waiting for you right around the corner. For example, if you got a brand new job and you got so happy about that brand new job, it's the perfect company, the perfect salary, the perfect location, the perfect coworkers, the office is beautiful, and you're so excited about that job. And you walked into that company and you were so thrilled to be working that job. Well, 3 years later, when the company goes out of business and you don't have a job anymore, you'll be angry, you'll be frustrated, because you allowed your mind to get conditional happiness, because the mind can only be happy if this particular condition is met. And the Buddha is teaching you to move beyond that. So you need to be willing to eliminate the temporary happiness in order to be able to get to permanent happiness. And that's what the Buddha is guiding you towards. And that's why I use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, because it's bringing your mind to fully understand the full spectrum of feelings and emotions that the Buddha is guiding you to understand. That word suffering only describes the painful feelings. So that means you're only understanding 33% of his teachings. You're missing 66% of his teachings. And how could you ever get to the goal if you were missing 66% of a teacher's teachings? So I encourage you to use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. This is explaining the unenlightened mind. Then there's something called the universal truth of non-self. I'm going to explain to you guys what this is. This is actually the solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. But let me first explain to you the problem before I explain to you the solution, because then you'll understand it a lot better. So remember the 10 fetters. Those are those 10 individual pollutions that I mentioned that the Buddha describes in the mind and teaches you how to uproot and eliminate out of the mind. One of the very first fetters or pollutions is called personal existence view. This is where the mind is clinging to this body or your mind, thinking that this is who you are as a person. The mind will cling to your self-image or your self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, and you can only feel comfortable if you're being perceived that way. So, for example, if you've ever been in a social situation and you spilled something on your clothing and you were embarrassed by that, that's your personal existence view, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only feel comfortable if you're being perceived that way. So as long as your clothes are clean, your mind can feel comfortable because you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. But when you spill something on your clothing, you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived. And now your mind's frustrated or angry or embarrassed or disappointed or something like this. Or maybe you stood in front of your closet and you thought, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? And you put on a certain set of clothing and you looked in the mirror and you're like, no, that's not it. And you put on another set and you're like, that's not it. And you put on a third set and you're like, all right, now I feel comfortable to go outside. This is your personal existence view. Maybe you were like me when I was a kid. I used to get out gel and mousse and I'd run it through my hair. And I tried to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I'd go to school. This is personal existence view. Sometimes I did this for so long I'd miss the school bus on the way to school, right? Because I didn't feel comfortable going outside until every little hair is in exactly the right spot. Or maybe you looked in the mirror and you saw a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair and you were shaken up by that. That's your personal existence view. The mind's clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are as a person, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only feel comfortable if you're being perceived that way. But then there's the self-identity. What the self-identity is that you're clinging to the mind and an identity inside the mind, based in your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. You could be clinging to any number of different things, thinking that this is who you are as a person. And now you want to be perceived by people in a certain way. And you can only feel comfortable if you're being perceived that way. So, for example, you might think of yourself as a Brit, or as an American, or as German, or as Chinese or Japanese, or I am a Mexican, or I am Lithuanian, or any of this I am. Well, now when you're at a restaurant and two tables over, everyone's like, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. I've never actually heard this before, but maybe you might hear this, right? And now you're like, wow, they're talking about me. I'm an American. And you get all these pleasant feelings, right? But it's only a matter of time before two tables over, you hear something that's degrading and disparaging about your nationality and how you're identifying in your mind. And now you're frustrated or you're angry. Or say you're in a relationship with like a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you think, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife. And now when you're in the relationship, you could feel really great about being in the relationship. There's a certain level of comfort. But then when you guys break up and you're no longer in a relationship, your mind doesn't identify with I am single. But because your mind is identifying with I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, your mind is uncomfortable. You don't feel comfortable being single. And you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. And the mind thought that was the way to actually solve this. Where in reality, this is your mind clinging to an identity of who you think you are as a person. Or say you had a job or occupation, like I am a police officer. And now I'm performing that job and I feel really great. 10 years, 15 years into the career, maybe you get injured, maybe you get laid off, maybe you get fired, and you can't do that job anymore. Maybe you retire. But you have this identity in your mind that I am a police officer. And now when you're driving a taxi cab, you're all disgruntled and frustrated and angry, feeling like less of a person. You feel unwhole. This is because the mind's clinging to a personal existence view. So the solution for this is to realize non-self, is to realize that there is no self here. But the mind is clinging to this, thinking that this body, this self-image, or this self-identity, this mind is who you are. And the mind gets very confused in these situations. So this universal truth of non-self is helping you to be able to see that there is no self. But this is oftentimes very challenging for people to understand because you spend so much time accumulating a self. Ever since you were born, every single one of us were given labels. I don't know all of your labels, but my label is David. Right? And now we have a certain label and we assign a certain character, a certain personality to this. We even have certain countries that we've lived in, and they might have a flag or a national anthem or sports teams, and we adopt this identity of who we think we are as a person in our mind. And now we feel like we got to cheer for our sports team because we're American, or I am a Brit, or I am an Aussie, or any of this I am, right? But the Buddha is explaining to you that's not who you are. So you need to get to a point where you realize non-self, that you realize that there is a body and there is a mind, and they've come together for this existence, but this doesn't determine who you are as a person. So there's more to learn here under the universal truth of non-self, but since this is just an introduction class, I just kind of introduce it to you. I will show you how to independently verify it, whether you understand this now or not. Like I said, some people don't understand it when I first teach it. Other people, they understand it right away. But oftentimes it takes much more discussion to be able to understand this. But no matter where you are, whether you're understanding it or not, I can show you how to independently verify that there is no self. Okay? So think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and now. Think about how you thought of yourself. Has it been exactly the same through all those 4 phases of your life? Or have you been thinking about yourself in different ways throughout those 4 phases? Would you say it's been the same or different? It's been different, right? Here's another way. If your arm is amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? She's saying no. You're saying no. You're saying no. Everybody's saying no. So you can see intellectually, you understand this body is not you, because otherwise you would answer that question differently. You would say, yeah, there's less body, so there's less me, so I'm less of a person. But nobody usually answers it that way, right? You understand that this body is not you. You understand that intellectually, but the mind's confusion, the personal existence view in the heat of the moment, when someone's like, wow, you're so beautiful. You're so handsome. That shirt brings out the color of your eyes. Oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. You're like, wow, they're talking about me, right? But then it's only a matter of time before someone says, where did you get that haircut? Are you going outside looking like that? Right? And now you're frustrated or angry, right? Because you think they're talking about me, right? But intellectually, you understand this body's not you. So there's this confusion that the mind has with personal existence view. And then here's the third way you can independently verify that there is no self. Think about who are you? Think about where are you? So if I asked you the question, where are you? Where would you do? Point to yourself. Where are you? Where are you? Okay, you're pointing here. That's a common place. People will usually either point here, here. Yeah, that's what people usually do, right? Well, if you're pointing to something, ask yourself, what are you pointing to? If I pointed and I said, I am here, what am I pointing to? I'm pointing to a shirt, right? Ask yourself, is that who you are? That shirt that you've got on? Like if we took off our shirt and we held it up and pointed to it, is that you? Is that who you are? That's not you, right? So we can throw that away. Where are you? And someone might point again. Well, look at what you're pointing to at that point. You'd be pointing to skin. So ask yourself, is that who you are? This skin that you've got? If we took off the skin and we held it up and pointed to it, is that you? That skin that you've got? That's not you. So we throw that away. Where are you? And someone might point again. Well, we've got bones, we've got muscle tissue, we've got organs, we've got fluid. None of these bits and pieces and parts are you. But the mind's clinging to all of this, thinking that this is who you are. And that's what personal existence view is. And you need to get to the point where you realize that none of this stuff is you. And there's more training to be able to help you get to that point. You're not going to be able to do that today in a class like this. Okay, but at least you're starting to at least be introduced to this. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys have about these three universal truths, because they're building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. Any questions here that you guys have? No questions? Okay, let me check online. I don't see any online either. Okay, so now just one little thing to help you understand the Four Noble Truths, and then we'll be off to those. So there's something called craving, desire, attachment, expectations, wants, holding, clinging, grasping. This is the mind longing, yearning for something, chasing after the objects of its affection. It's like the mind's pulling towards things. It's almost like the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is providing some lasting satisfaction. So the mind will chase it and chase it and chase it. The mind thinks that something external is going to provide this lasting satisfaction. So it will chase after it. If you've ever been in the mall and you saw like a brand new pair of shoes and you were like, oh, brand new pair of shoes, or maybe it was jewelry or a video game or some other thing, maybe a new phone or something like this. And you're like, oh, I just got to have that. The craving, desire, attachment isn't the object itself. It's the way that the mind is longing, yearning for the object. Right? So sometimes people don't understand this, but it's the longing, yearning that the mind is doing, trying to grab on to this thing. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Have you experienced this? Yeah, you guys all shaking your heads? Yeah. Okay. So this is craving, desire, attachment. This is the way the mind's longing, yearning for something. It's not the object itself. Okay. So now I can help you understand the Four Noble Truths. And this is where you can have a real breakthrough to being able to understand what's causing your discontent feelings. Because in these four simple statements, you're going to be able to understand the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. Okay, so the first one is the problem. Everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. So the discontentedness is the problem. Those conditioned feelings that the mind's shaken up. It's unsteady, it's uncalm. That it's happy and excited, but then it's angry and frustrated. Then it's feeling shy and embarrassed. Then it's experiencing guilt or shame or fear. Of course, there's peacefulness here and there, but it's only a matter of time before the mind is shaken up. This is the problem that each and every unenlightened being is experiencing. Discontentedness, conditioned feelings. The second noble truth is that discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. So I'm going to say this a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples to help you see this. So the discontentedness, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. It's being caused by craving, desire, attachment. The mind's longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of its affection. It's craving permanence while everything in the world around you is actually impermanent. So here's some examples for you. Think back to maybe a boyfriend or girlfriend that you got together with. When you guys first got together, you were probably really happy. You were really excited. Right? This person was calling you, they were checking in on you, they were showing you affection, they were maybe inviting you to dinner, to the movies, maybe you were going to nice walks in the park, maybe you were having intimate contact, having great conversations. Oh my gosh, it was so wonderful at the beginning, right? It felt so great, right? You're having all these pleasant feelings because the mind was getting what it wanted. But then as the relationship went on, it slowly deteriorated and you guys broke up. And now you might have been angry or frustrated. You might have been lonely or bored, or you might have been missing this person. Oftentimes people think it's love that's causing this, but it's not love. What it is the mind's holding on and craving permanence. As long as this person's in your life, you're happy because the mind's getting what it wants. But when you're not getting what you want, that this person is not permanent in your life, the mind doesn't like that. And that's where it gets angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. You can see this if you've had someone close to you that has died, like mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, brothers or sisters. You might have been grieving or feeling sorrowful. You're not a bad person that your mind was doing this, because every unenlightened mind does this. What was happening is the mind was holding on and craving permanence. As long as the mind's getting what it wants, grandma and grandpa's alive, you're happy, you're excited, you feel great. But then when the mind's not getting what it wants, now the mind experiences anger, sadness, or frustration, or some other painful feeling. You can see this if you've been to a wedding. Maybe you've been to a wedding and you saw people crying and they're upset, right? Maybe brother or sisters going off into the world with somebody else, and mom and dad and brothers and sisters are crying and they're grieving. It's not love that's causing that, because if you love someone, that's a genuine interest in seeing them be well. They're starting a new life. They're starting a new relationship. That's wonderful. What's causing the grief at a wedding is the mind's holding on. It's like, that's my brother. That's my sister. Your mind is confronted with this impermanence that you realize they're not yours. They don't belong to you. They're going to go off into the world with other people. If you can think back to when you got dropped off at school or university or something like this, that your parents might have been crying, or you might have been crying when you got dropped off. You probably saw this at your job, perhaps. Like a lot of children are crying and the parents are crying, right? It's because the mind's holding on. Again, if it's love and your child's going to school, this is wonderful. They're getting an education. This is outstanding. But that's not what's causing the painful feelings. What's causing the painful feelings is the mind's holding on and craving permanence, thinking that this person was permanent in your life, right? For example, the boyfriend or girlfriend, even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, you guys were going to die eventually, and you guys aren't going to be in a relationship anymore, right? This child that was born, it's going to eventually go off into the world with other people. It's going to go to school. You're going to get married perhaps, or do other things. It's not going to be with you permanently. So mom and dad and the children can have difficulties when they're experiencing this impermanence because their mind's holding on and craving permanence. Let me give you some examples that don't involve relationships, because you might be able to see this more clearly. Think about if you got a brand new car. that there's a certain car that you've always been wanting to purchase, and you've saved up your money for like 10 years to purchase your dream car. You've been shoving money under the mattress in your bed. And now eventually you got all the money you need and you're going down to the store to buy your car. And you purchase this car, you sign the papers, you get the keys, you drive off the parking lot, and your friends are like, wow, look at her. She's so successful. Wow, look at him. He's doing really great in life. He's got that new car. Wow, look at them. And you're so proud driving your new car. And then you park it at a store and you go inside. And then when you come out, there's a scratch on your car. You might be crushed. You might be so angry. You might be frustrated. It's not the scratch that's causing it. And it's not the person who scratched your car. This is the mind craving permanence. The mind wanted this car to be permanently beautiful, when in reality, that's not the case. This car is impermanent. It's only a matter of time before it gets a scratch or something else. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise, because when we walk through a parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anyone's car. But the fact is that this car is going to deteriorate. It's only a matter of time. So if you crave permanence, when you're experiencing impermanence, the mind doesn't like that. In fact, that's another way to say this. We could say that the mind craves permanence while it's living in an impermanent world. Or another way to say this is that the mind doesn't like impermanence. It doesn't like change. When things are changing, the mind doesn't like this. You can independently verify this. Look at your own life. Look at a recent situation where you've been angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. It could have been this morning. It could have been yesterday or last week. Look at that with these fresh eyes, because what I'm teaching you is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. But in reality, it's what's going on in the mind, right? It's not the outside world. So look at that situation with these fresh eyes. What was it that you wanted? What were you expecting? What were you longing, yearning for? And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get it, you were angry or sad or frustrated. If you can see it, you can have a real breakthrough to being able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And then you can actually fix it, where you can eliminate these cravings, desires, attachments in the mind. But you need to first be able to independently verify it for yourself. So you need to penetrate into this. You can look at your life when you were experiencing change. Whenever you were experiencing change, those were the most difficult times for you in life. When you were changing living locations, when you were changing jobs or occupations, when your relationships were changing, those were the most difficult times for you in your life, whenever things were changing. That's because the mind's holding on and craving permanence. So when the mind doesn't understand the second noble truth, it will tend to push people away. That's aversion, pushing people away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem, because when you pushed away friends and family out of your life, you still get angry. You still get frustrated. If they were the true cause of your problem, when you push them out of your life, you'd be happy from that point forward. Or the second thing you'll do is you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech and actions, because the mind firmly believes that it's the outside world that's causing these feelings. So it's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear it into doing things your way. Or the third thing you'll do is put expectations on people and try to pressure them to do things your way. And again, people might actually be doing this to you too, where they're pushing you away. They're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're putting expectations on you and trying to pressure you. And that's all coming from not understanding the second noble truth, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. But you need to see it for yourself. And that's why I invite you to take a look at your own mind and your own situations to be able to see it. There's been plenty of students that needed help over time to be able to see that it's their own mind that's causing these feelings. I'll give you one example so you can understand this a little bit more. I had a student contact me one time. They said, David, I really need your help. I said, okay, sure. What do you need? They said, I know that you teach that it's my own mind that's causing these feelings, but I'm sure it's my wife. and I need you to help me here. And I was like, all right, what's going on? They were like, well, I went to work the other day and my house looked beautiful. It looked immaculate. And I went to work and I came home and she had this craft project all over the house. And when I walked in, I got angry. I got frustrated. How did my mind cause this anger and frustration? I wasn't even there. She's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be angry and frustrated? I said, no, it was your own mind. You were craving permanence. You were expecting permanence. That when you went to work, your house looked a certain way. And when you came home, you were expecting it to look exactly the same way. Where in reality, that's not the case. That this house is not going to look the same every single time. So you basically are sabotaging your ability to be happy permanently because the mind is craving permanence, wanting and expecting things to be permanent. So your house can't look any particular way permanently. But also that craft project that's all over the house, that's not permanent either. She's going to put it away, and maybe you even help her, right? So you can see through this example and any number of other examples I could give you. Every single time you've ever been angry in your entire life, it was always coming from your own mind. It doesn't mean that somebody else wasn't doing something unwise, because they very well could have been doing something unwise. I'm sure you've been in knockdown, drag out arguments where you've been trying to convince people to stop doing what they're doing, or else you're going to continue to get angry. So they could have very easily been doing something that was unwise, but your mind's craving for everybody to do it one particular way. And you can only be happy when it's being done that way. So think back to when we were a child. We went to our mom and dad and we were like, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? They were like, sure, little David, here's your chocolate and ice cream. Ah, thank you, Mommy and Daddy. You're so great. You're the best Mommy and Daddy ever. Right? And then the second day comes around. Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? Sure, here you go. Here's your chocolate and ice cream. Ah, thank you so much, Mommy and Daddy. You're so wonderful. Well, the third day came around and Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? No. You're the worst Mommy and Daddy ever. We didn't get what we wanted, what we expected. We wanted that chocolate and ice cream to be permanent, right? And we were longing, yearning for it. And we could only be happy if we got what we wanted. That's what the mind's doing in the unenlightened state. But because of the mind's lack of wisdom, it doesn't understand that. So that's what the Buddha is helping you to be able to see. But you need to independently see it for yourself. So that's why I invite you to look at your own life and see it for yourself. You're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong. Every single being that's ever been born has experienced exactly the same thing, including the Buddha. But he figured out how to solve it. Because if you can understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings based in craving, desire, attachment, the third noble truth is very empowering, because the third noble truth explains to you that you can fix it, that the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating cravings, desires, attachments. If you eliminate the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, you can eliminate your anger and frustration. But sometimes when I say that, people say, well, wouldn't my mind swing all the way to the other side if I wasn't chasing after things? Well, it might, but that's not what the Buddha is teaching you. He's not teaching you to chase after things, informing your feelings on whether you get it or not. But he's also not teaching you to be dull and lethargic and lazy. But this is what the unenlightened mind can see very clearly, these two extremes. What the Buddha is doing is inviting you to come to the middle, where you can gradually pursue your goals, objectives, or interests through wise decision making. But as long as you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you will chase after those things, and you can only be happy if you get what you want. If that's what you're doing, that's not a goal. That's not an objective. That's a craving, desire, attachment. So there's possible to eliminate your discontentedness by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. Because if you eliminate the cause, which is craving, desire, attachment, you'll eliminate the effect. That's what the third noble truth is explaining to you, that you need to train your mind to let go. Because with craving, desire, attachment, you'll hold on very tightly. But you can independently verify this third noble truth too. Think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that when you guys first broke up, you were probably sad. You were probably missing this person, feeling lonely and bored. But at some point, your mind let go. You were like, you know what? If she wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go. Or if he wants to move to a different part of the world, so be it. And your mind let go, right? But as long as you were holding on and craving that permanence, it hurt and it was painful. So your mind needs to learn how to let go. But the mind doesn't know how to let go in the unenlightened state. And that's where the fourth noble truth comes in. The fourth noble truth is explaining the solution is the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in eliminating all the longing, yearning, the craving, the forming your feelings on whether or not you get this thing or not. And it starts with right view. You need to have the right view. The right view is to understand it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that it's craving, desire, attachment. If you have wrong view, you'll blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. And then you'll push those people away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, or you'll put your expectations on them and try to pressure them to do things your way because the mind's craving this permanence. So establishing right view is the very first teaching of the Buddha. And what you would like to do is, if you're going to establish right view, is you need to penetrate into this and see the truth for yourself, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And now, instead of blaming other people for the feelings that you experience, you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And this is, again, very empowering, because if it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that means you can fix it. Where if it's other people that are causing these, you can't fix it, right? So what you would like to do in order to practice right view is now and forever, whenever your mind's angry or sad or frustrated or some other feeling, start looking inward. Start looking inward at your own mind. What is the craving? What is the longing? What is the yearning? Right? So let's just say you go to the airport and you're so excited to go to Thailand. You just can't wait to get to Thailand because you know they have mango and sticky rice. They have massages. They have elephants to play with. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get to Thailand. Right? You're so excited. But then you show up and your plane's delayed. Right? And now you're sitting there in the waiting area, frustrated and irritated and grumpy, right? Well, it's not the airline company that's causing that. That's your craving. That's your longing, yearning. I just can't wait to get that mango and sticky rice. I just can't wait to get to those massages and those elephants. Your mind's longing, yearning to hurry up and get on the airplane, right? So instead of blaming the airline company and being angry and frustrated at them, just train your mind to let go, that there is impermanence. Of course the plane is late. Of course it's delayed. There's going to be weather issues. There's going to be maintenance issues. There's going to be crew issues. If you travel enough, you're going to meet with some delays, right? It's going to happen because the world is impermanent. But remember, the mind craves permanence. So that's why when you show up at the airport, you might notice frustration. But you can train your mind to let that go and just realize, well, of course, this is normal. Okay, I need to wait here for an extra 2 or 3 hours. All right, it's understandable because the world is impermanent. Okay, so this is what I have to share with you guys today, but I'd like to pause and see if you guys have questions. Do you have any questions on this Four Noble Truths? Because this is what you really need to understand to really start to make your way towards the elimination of discontentedness and getting to this peace and joy. Anything you guys would like to ask here? No questions? Okay, I don't see any online either. All right, so just the last thing to add here at the end to remind you, what the teachings of the Buddha are to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But you need to know what's hurting you is inside your own mind. It's not the outside world. This isn't about blame or fault or punishments or anything like that, right? It's about seeing true reality and be able to see that, okay, it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, because it's physically impossible for someone else to insert a feeling into your mind. It's physically impossible, right? So once you come to terms with this and you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, now you get on the path to enlightenment, and the Buddha helps you to be able to see how to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll never experience painful mental feelings ever again. Your mind will be completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It'll be permanently happy and cheerful and glad and bright and uplifted. Okay, so if you guys would like to learn more, there's opportunities for you guys to do that. In order to get continued support on the path to enlightenment, there's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, there's quizzes. It's all available for you at no cost. You can get access to all of this stuff through our website. We have in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats where you can learn either here in Thailand or online anytime you want. You can just look at our website. You'll see all the options for that. Then we have 2 ongoing programs. It's called the Group Learning Program is the first one. It takes this first book, and every Sunday I go chapter by chapter, just about an hour and a half each Sunday, where I'm gradually walking you through this. And you could learn here, but you could learn online as well. This is at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Thai time. So you could gradually learn over a 7-month period. And then volumes 2 through 13, this is the Pali Canon and English study group, where about a year and a half, I gradually walk students through that. Then as you're learning in all these classes and retreats, which are available at no cost, by the way, you can also get personal guidance, because it's one thing to learn in class, but it's a whole other thing to relate it to your day-to-day activities and what you're experiencing in each situation. So if you'd like to meet in person or you'd like to meet online, from our website, you'll be able to see how to do that. And that way you can learn in the classes, but then you can relate it to your day-to-day activities. And that's also available for you at no cost. You can schedule as many of those as you like. Then there's a Facebook group where you can ask questions in there, and I will be the one who answers your question. None of the members are actually answering questions. It's only me who's answering the questions in there. So this is a way for you to ask questions, but you could also read other people's questions and get help that way as well. So there's essentially 4 ways for you to get help. You can ask questions in a live class. You can post in our Facebook group. You can send me a private message and I'll answer you that way. Or you can schedule an appointment to either meet online or in person, and then I will help you that way. So these are all the ways that you can actually get continued help and continued support. So I'll just end by saying thank you to all of you guys. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha, because as you learn and grow as a person, it's helping you. It's helping those close to you, because you're being less and less hostile and bitter to the people around you. And it's helping all of humanity become a kinder, gentler, more loving society. So thank you for your interest to learn and practice his teachings. If you'd like to see all the options that we have to learn, you can look on our bulletin board over there, or you can look online. You can come and talk to me and I'll help you get plugged in to the teachings. So have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Oh, yeah? Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.